little bit long-winded because I kept ranting about how much I love this team, so here's a little bit more of a concise version of what makes this team so good. Anytime you get a knockdown with Rain, whether it's a projectile, a down 2, any combo into a geyser, an anti-air, a throw, literally anything that you've done successfully is gonna go into the Darrius down Kameo ambush. And these are inescapable, even like from your regular projectile, the opponent cannot jump out of this. So this immediately enforces the threat of anytime I get a knockdown, I'm getting good Oki and good mix. Now what do we get when we get this? You can hold down Darrius to set the timing manually off of any of these knockdowns, but generally, if you press the button right before the opponent hits the ground, you're going to hit him with about the immediate attack, and then you don't have to time it manually. And my favorite option to go for is Darrius into the Whirlpool. This can either be overhead low, which if the opponent isn't expecting the overhead, they're going to get hit by it and splat into a very meaty Whirlpool, which in that example hit the opponent. But if they are blocking low, as they usually are, because they're expecting the Whirlpool, then you can see the low is so meaty that your jump in is going to be so close to it that it can't be upblocked, and you basically just get free pressure. So you get immense plus frames from the overhead mix-up, thanks to the Whirlpool. Or if the opponent is starting to get used to you throwing out a bunch of overheads and now they're, blocking overhead, maybe they don't successfully block the low that hits very close to it. And you get a full combo from the Whirlpool hitting the opponent. Or if they're, being cheeky and they're gonna quickly block overhead and then low, you can just hold down Darrius to not kick the opponent at all and they just get hit by the low. Even be sneaky and do the reverse. And if you are holding down Darrius and you see they block the low, you can still let go and release their overhead and smack him for thinking that they're smart. Basically, you can go for any combination to mix up the opponent here, and it's going to be very beneficial for you. You're either going to be really plus or get a combo in any of these situations. It's pretty cool. As you can see here, there are even setups where you can hold down Darrius and have him kick you into whirlpools. There is an infinite amount of potential here. Now, even though this doesn't launch the opponent, if your timing is right, the opponent is actually briefly airborne. So you can catch him and get full combos and go for some interesting setups that way. Something that I like to do that's based off of this is actually use the brief airborne amount to go for this airborne attack string. And even though this is an overhead low mix, because you can't up-block Darrius's overhead, you get basically a free jump in and free pressure, and for Rain that's pretty strong. Because Rain's mix, when he does have it guaranteed, is pretty strong. You've got immediate threats of overheads, lows, and even overhead cancels into throws. All of which, by the way, will continue into more immediate knockdown overhead mix. And then from there, there's always the layers. I can just hold down Darrius and go for a throw. Or I can hold down Darrius and go for a low overhead mix-up kind of situation. There's always a lot of layers. If I am closer to the opponent, I can summon him and go for this low overhead kind of mix here. And although, that's kind of simple, it's pretty good because it also is kind of automatic, like option select kind of. Because if I see the opponent gets hit by it, well then I can just hit confirm the back 2 and Darrius actually misses because the opponent gets sucked away from the kick and I just go for my regular Rain combo. But if the opponent does block it, then I just don't do the launcher and then I just leave it and his kick still comes out. So there's a little bit of mix with the overhead low and then overhead. And I'm also plus. And this is using the exact same timing of just tap back 2 and then release Darrius just like a moment afterwards, and it'll work on block or on hit, because he'll miss. Pretty cool. There's also mix-up potential where if you go for this string here, which has a low in it, you can get some low overhead, overhead low, or they can hit on the same frame and lead to an unblockable that keeps the opponent on the ground and goes for a full combo. Yeah. This version where you release Darrius just after the forward 2 leads to a full combo, but not when you're mid-screen. Unfortunately, you do have to be in the corner. But that's pretty crazy for an unblockable damage, and pretty easy to do. Mid-screen, I'd recommend just ending the string or something. And as you can see there, with the correct timing, you get a lot of damage and what's effectively an unblockable. If that is a little bit tricky though, you also just have general mix-up potential, like where if I just go for the forward 2, release it and go for the launcher, that leads to a full combo even mid-screen. Or I can go for the low, and that, as we know, is easy to hit confirm, and I just hold down Darrius, let him run away and go for a regular rain combo. And if the opponent does manage to block the whole sequence, well, you know, you can just use the low and overhead mix to go for plus frames into a throw. Now keep in mind that most of this pressure can be done off of any knockdown we get, whether that's a regular combo, or a throw, or even like a projectile from completely full screen. But when you are full screen, you're kind of limited, you know, you can't obviously get back 2 mix from over here, but you've got the overhead low whirlpool stuff mainly. And you've got the mix-ups where you hold it down, go for low, low overhead. And keep in mind, this is always a threat, because that overhead kick, if you do just do the fastest possible timing, is inescapable. The opponent can't jump out of it and is completely meaty. So there's always the base mix-up of them having to block the overhead, and most of the time, keep in mind, they won't. They're gonna be blocking low, and they're gonna die. And they're either gonna have to block a really meaty whirlpool, or they'll accidentally get hit by that too. And yeah, we've gone over the mix, so I'm not gonna repeat myself. We've also got the increased combo potential thanks to Darrius's ambush kick. Now, I will say that this is not the most useful, you're not gonna be using it all the time, and there's gonna be 3 main uses for this. Either it's going to be comboing off of things like your down 2 that you can't normally combo off of, or your armor, just to, you know, get damage off of things that you usually won't, and I only recommend doing it when it's going to kill the opponent. Because any other situation, I recommend going for this overhead mix-ups, because they're really good, and we've talked about all the ways that they're amazing, and they have a lot more potential, and it only costs you half a bar instead of the whole entire bar. So only do this. If the opponent is at about 20% life, then you can get this, and it'll kill them. Then go for it. Taking a round is always worth it. At the end of an extended combo, the gravity is kind of too intense to get anything more interesting juggle-wise, so I recommend just going for this ender. It adds a bunch of extra damage to your combo, but isn't worth it unless it kills the opponent, once again. There is, of course, the potential to go for these forwards flip kick setups, but I don't really think they're worth it, especially when you have these setups, which are nearly as good for half the price. And the last time you might use this is on block, because although it is really good way of, you know, getting a safe combo, safe armored move that you get combos off of, sometimes the opponent is going to block. And when you do this, not only do you get plus frames from him doing the kick, and you can go for whatever pressure afterwards, there's a little bit more potential after this as well, because if the opponent is perchance trying to mash you out of it, then these follow-ups are armored, and you have basically a guaranteed way of going for pressure after that kick. So the opponent, you know, a lot of people do like to press buttons even when you're plus. Going for that is a really good option, and it catches just about everyone. And it is also just something you can go for without, like, any risk at all, because even if the opponent blocks throughout the entire thing, it is completely safe. and does a nice amount of chip damage, which leads me to the very last situation, which is if you do just want to chip the opponent out and kill him by blocking, then, okay, that was really badly done. Then this is certainly a way that you can get that done. That's about 10% from chip. Once again, it uses a lot of Kameo meter, and that means that you can't go for safe wake-ups or, you know, any of your overhead Oki. So I really only recommend doing these things with the neutral Kameo when it wins you the round, or if you just desperately need a safe armored launcher. And that's a summary of the synergy between Rain and Darrius. I think it's really strong and most importantly really fun. Also, you get a little bit extra life, which is always useful. Let me know if you play the stream or if you try them out how it goes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!